the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the Brockvmac Legendary Rivals podcast, and today we are sending a solar flare or a raven or a pigeon out to Eastern Ontario, where Grant Giffin, Brock Hall of Fame, shortstop, fire plug, all-around good guy, is staring back at us with an obscenely colored red Brock Badgers hoodie, but, you know, he's proudly flying the colors today. Grant, what are you up to these days? I think it'd be great for us to first get caught up on what you're doing right now.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm out in Napanee, Ontario, so between Belleville and Kingston. So I've been living there for about 7 or 8 years. Wife and a couple of kids, 2 sons, 16 and 14. Been teaching for the last 21 years. Yeah.
My goodness, that's a lot of kids in your front.
Over 20. Been working for 20 plus years. Yeah.
It kind of seems weird, doesn't it? Right? When you think about it, it's like, man, time flies. And it's so, you know, we don't have a lot of folks that are, you know, east of, you know, the Eastern GTA. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what life is like in Napanee. And are you teaching in Napanee, in Greater Napanee, or are you going into Kingston to
actually Belleville. So
okay.
Yeah, been at the same school in Belleville since I started my teaching career. So we moved out to Napanee because my wife has a business in Kingston, so we kind of were meeting halfway to lessen the commute. But yeah, so I've been teaching in Belleville, and
you enjoy.
I had a bit of a different school, so I teach at a school for the deaf. So all of our students are deaf or hard of hearing.
Wow, that is incredible. So tell me a little bit about what that's like. How does that differ from what you would be doing normally in a classroom? Are you teaching in sign language or?
Yeah, so everything is like the method of instruction is all American Sign Language. So that, of course, I had to learn that, right, when I first started teaching, which was a bit of a challenge. But all the curriculum is the standard Ontario curriculum we use, and the schools from like JK right up to, you know, grade 12. Kind of deal. So I've kind of done about everything from grade 3 to grade 12.
It must bring you an enormous sense of giving back or reward, because you knowing that these kids probably have had some challenges as a result of just everyday communication that we take for granted. Do you think it gives you a little bit more pride in what you're doing?
Maybe at first, but once you get into it, it becomes like the new normal, right? They're just sort of normal kids, and they just have, you know, some level of hearing impairment. So their education has to be kind of, you know, geared that way. But once you get into it, it's just like sort of the regular kids, you know.
Who knew the obscene world of getting signs from third base would prep you for your career, right?
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
You know, it's that's exciting, and I think that is really great work. And you know, tell us a little bit about, you know, you're really in the land of 1,000 lakes area there with you know, access to all kinds of different things that other people wouldn't see in the province. What do you like to do outside of work? You know, living in Kingston, in the Kingston area there. Lots to do in Kingston, obviously, but there's also all kinds of outdoor stuff. So tell me a little bit about you know, what life looks like for you outside of a classroom.
Well, I got with two sort of teenagers. There's lots of shuttling them around to their different activities. So that's the main kind of extracurricular stuff I'm doing right now is for my kids, but that's fine. I'm sure we've all been there, and they're only around for so long, right? And then they're off on their own. So yeah.
You're a personal Uber and a personal ATM at a certain point, and also
Yeah. Well, the oldest one just got his license, so that's a thing, right? He's got his G1, so
he's looking to borrow the car all the time. Yeah.
What's that? Well,
He's
no,
looking to borrow the car.
He still needs an auto with him, right? So that's another, challenge, I guess. Parent-child relationship challenge, being in a car.
Well, it's probably a little bit like a prison calendar. You're just counting down the days until he's able to drive on his own, right? Then it just becomes less of a hassle.
That's the thing when you live in the country, like you can't walk anywhere, so it's pretty essential to have a license, right? When you're, a young adult.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to go see your friends or go to an event or something, you can't just hop on a bus and go. You got to drive.
Yeah, well, I think it's super cool that and it's maybe a little less chaotic and certainly not as traffic confused as living in Toronto, and probably a pretty good place to raise a couple of sons. And, the question, of course, as they get closer and closer to, university and college are you going to be openly pushing for them to go to Brock?
No, I don't. It doesn't matter where they go. They can go anywhere.
As long as they don't go to McMaster, right? That Doug Lunny, who pitched for McMaster for years, his son is now the starting shortstop on the Brock team, and
I heard that. Yeah,
he's putting up with it from both sides now. So thank God Doug's got some thick skin.
Well, my wife and brother-in-law are both Mac grads, so there's a bit of a connection there too.
I'd say, my goodness, and then. So, Grant, you're going to be super motivated to win this game in about 6.5 months so that we can have bragging rights in perpetuity, right?
Yeah, in my head, right? But maybe not in actuality.
We'll all collectively have the same dream, and then we'll be living the same nightmare.
Yeah.
But, Grant, why don't we start with, how you grew up and who you were before you came to Brock? Because I think most of the time as you're playing ball, as you're living in the moment. It's what you're doing that day, and it's kind of what you're doing in that moment. So maybe not a lot of people know your roots. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, so I grew up like in the country, kind of outside of Brockville, Ontario, in this little town called Mallorytown. So I have an older brother, a couple years older. So there was no baseball in our little town, so we played fastball. So that's kind of the first. My dad played like slow pitch on the local slow pitch team, so I'd always be going to games there. And when you have a town that small, you have age divisions, but really, there's just kind of one team, right? So I was often playing with my brother's age kids, and I just kind of was able to compete at that level even when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, playing against kids 2 or 3 years older. I could always kind of hold my own. So then I kind of, outgrew that little basketball community. And there was another kid in my grade who wanted to try and go to Brockville to play, which was, a big deal. Going all the way into the big city of Brockville to play baseball. So I think the parents of the two families probably got together and said, well, we can share rides and stuff and get these kids into Brockville to, play a more organized type of baseball, right?
Yeah, so that's fill in the blanks for people. I am very familiar with the Brockville program, but I think people outside of Brockville or that haven't played against Brockville don't have a great understanding of what the Brockville program is, because it's kind of an outlier comparative to the EOBA centers in Kingston and from what I recall, Belleville had a team, and we all hated going to Belleville because the bugs would eat you. The mosquitoes were horrific. Peterborough was also horrific. Their park is on a river, so the amount of bugs in the summer, you would just have be eaten alive. So that was
Yeah.
kind of how we defined the EOBA. But Brockville was not there. It's a different kind of a program. Why don't you kind of explain to everybody what the Brockville program is all about?
Well, so my friend and I, Joe, when we went, we were like 11. So Brockville was in like the little league system at the time. So 11 and 12-year-olds would go to like the local playdowns and the provincials and that sort of thing. So you do that 11, 12. I think there was a great age 13 group and then a 14, 15-year-old little league group. So you kind of just progressed through that. And like we always had pretty good coaching, even at the minor level like that. And it was pretty serious. Like you play your house league teams and they pick like a rep team, right? And you'd go and compete. So Joe and I both actually made the rep team the very first year. And then we just continued on that pathway. Playing at some pretty, like, it really threw me into sort of some pretty competitive situations right off the bat. Like for a little kid, right? Who's never like really played competitive anything really. You're getting into like provincial like eliminations. You know, you lose this game, we go home. Usually we have a good team, but can never get over the hump kind of thing. But yeah, so I guess in that sense, that's kind of the route we did. And then after that little league experience, you go on to play. Usually, if you want to keep going, you go on and play for the junior team, like the 16 to 19-year-old group, and it was called the Brockville Bunnies, which I'm sure some people have heard of. It's kind of a weird name, but this goes back to the history of the team, I guess. And it was a really, like, looking back on it now, like a pretty hardcore, structured, intense program. Like we would go, like we'd have a couple weeks of tryouts, training camps. There's like lots of good players who would get cut and have to come back like the next year. We did lots of traveling. Like most of our games were either like we go to Ottawa and play a few teams, but most of the games we play were like against, upper New York State teams. Or like they have like Legion, they call them Legion ball teams there, or down in Syracuse. So that was kind of the environment that I developed through between 11 to Brock. But we would go like probably 50 games a summer. We would get in regularly.
Yeah, it's funny with a name like Bunnies, you think of the killer rabbit from Monty Python, but it actually is tied to the owner of the team. You guys had a team owner, and his name was and more than that, what I remember, because I played the Brockville Bunnies, was you guys had a bus. Now the bus I think was eventually retired, but it just I'd never seen a team with a bus, and you guys were playing American games, and it was quite a famous place that produced a lot of some major league players. I mean, we've talked a little bit about Peter Hoy, who came out of that program and pitched for the Red Sox, and I think I might be right or wrong, but I think Paul Quantrill had a stop in Brockville along his path, maybe from Port Hope, because he's a Port Hope guy. And it's Ken Babcock, who was the founder really of Canadian College and University Baseball, also was a Brockville Bunny. So lots of really reputable and great players have come out of that system, and it's because it was more intense than playing an EOBA schedule of 22 or 24 games in the summer. You're playing double that. You're playing U.S. competition. So kind of like the early version of what Brock was aiming to be from a university perspective. So, Grant, did you always play, were you always an infielder, or did you play different positions when you were growing up?
No, not. I was mostly an infielder, yeah. Like, of course, everyone tries, when you're younger, like obviously everyone sort of tries pitching and stuff, but mostly I didn't really play much outfield. I was always kind of like shortstop, second kind of deal, sometimes third, but mostly shortstop. Yeah.
Okay. And, I assume that there's no high school baseball out your way. I don't recall that there was high school baseball.
Like at that time?
Yeah.
No, it was like you just played for the Bunnies if you wanted to in the summertime.
So were you more of like when you were in high school, were you doing multiple sports? Were you a different kind of a student athlete, or were you really just focused on baseball at this point in your life?
I played sort of rec semi prep hockey, like every kid does, right? In another little small town outside of Brockville called Athens. But again, I mean, not much opportunity there. And when I got to high school, it was like, you know, kind of wanted to also play high school sports. So I quit hockey in grade 9 and then went and played like volleyball and basketball all through high school. And yeah, so that's what I did there. And then just baseball in the summertime.
Okay. And as you're proceeding through high school, do you have a career path in mind? Is there a job that you want to be looking at? Or at this point, I assume because you're on the Bunnies, you're likely also entertaining some offers to maybe go stateside for school. But
no, there weren't too many offers to go stateside. No.
Okay.
I think they looked at, some kid who was about 5'6" and kind of plump, and they didn't really see much potential there, which I get. But I didn't like in terms of career path. I mean, I got decent grades in high school, nothing crazy. I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just picked like phys ed because I like sports. Like that's as simple as my thought process was, right? So I think I applied to like York, U of T, and Brock in the visit programs. So
okay. And did you know that U of T and Brock at that point had baseball teams, or you were just looking to get into a phys ed program?
Yeah, both. I was aware for sure that Brock had a team. I was pretty sure U of T had a team. I knew like my brother was at U of T. He was been there for 2 years, so that's one of the reasons why I applied there, is to have some sort of family support if I did go to Toronto. But I talked to Lounsbury once one summer maybe, and he mentioned the program, and I think he gave me a phone call one time, and that was basically that was the recruiting process, right? So I didn't yeah.
We didn't send a limousine to pick you up from Brockville and swoop you down to St. Catharines?
No.
Jeez.
So yeah, I got into York University, did not get into U of T, but didn't get into Brock. So
okay.
Yeah, that was basically the decision process.
Well, thank goodness. I can't imagine an alternate universe where you were playing for Rick Johnson and Andy Green at U of T, but
yeah, that would have been weird.
So I'm excited, and the thing to remember, I think, for everybody is St. Catharines is a pretty good jaunt away from
100%.
From Napa, or from Brockville, or wherever you're at that point. In Mallory Town, which is, I always just equate it with Kingston because you're driving on the 401 and it's one in a series of signs that let you know that you're getting close to Kingston,
Yeah.
No consideration of going to Queens, given, that it's a big local draw for people, for sure.
No, yeah, there was just, I mean, it would have been a competitive program to get into, for one thing, and there was only 3 options, right? And it wasn't like far enough away. Like, I think I wanted to get like, away. The full experience,
That's amazing. So, your first year is in 1996.
Yep.
And did you start off in Residence Grant? And
so I was in the Village, Court 2, I think it was. Yeah, Court 2. And so my other friend from Brockville, he was my roommate, and 2 other people we didn't know. And then across the court was like Drew Arnold and Jeff Knapp, and Mike Whitehead. So they were kind of all ball players too, right? So that was nice to have them there in the same court.
Yeah, so your court was probably quiet, full of people studying all the time. Is that what that was?
Well, maybe on one side of the court. on the Jeff Knapp, Drew Arnold side, not so much.
Well, do you recall, you have these kinds of weird, I wouldn't say weird, but there's an obvious attempt to at least bring you up to speed that they've got a program. Did you have to go through a tryout or a training camp your first year?
Well, there was training camp was the week before school started.
Yeah.
That was the first time. The second time I'd been to St. Catharines. So this is kind of, so I was telling you, my brother went to U of T. So the training camp started like a week before school, right? And I was in residence, so I couldn't move in. So I kind of had to be like in training camp like for a week before school started. So my brother's friend went to Brock, so he got in touch with him, and I was gonna stay with him for the week, but all I had was like literally a ripped up piece of like foolscap with his phone number on it. So to contact him. So at that, like, he would have had to have been home, right? Nobody had cell phones. So I didn't talk to him before. He just kind of, he was
hey, it's me.
Well, I knew him a little bit, but so my brother says, okay, I'll drive you early and I'll go back to U of T kind of thing. I'll drive me to St. Catharines. And I couldn't bring any stuff because I couldn't move into residence. So I literally had like my baseball bag with, my baseball stuff and like, 3 changes of clothes in this like duffel bag. And so I knew the camp was starting the Monday morning or whatever. So we drive from Mallorytown, which is almost 5 hours to St. Catharines, right? So up we go, and we must have stayed over at his house in Toronto and then went the next morning. So he drops me off at Alex Mackenzie Park, that one that's up by the GM plant there. That's the reactivation. So he drops me off in the parking lot with my bag, and there's nobody there. And he's like, okay, bye. And he leaves, so I'm there.
He left you all alone?
Yeah, all alone. So I'm there in the parking lot with my baseball bag and like one phone number that I don't know where I'm staying that night or the week or anything. But so then like people start arriving and the camp gets going, and then it all worked out, of course. But it was just like one of those things like, yeah, bye, okay, bye, and then I'm just sitting there alone.
It's like a movie set, right? Like you're just the only one there, and you're looking around, and the tumbleweed blows by, and you're glad the zombies didn't come get you. Do you remember what your thoughts were when you were in camp and your first real opportunity to see the coaches in action and see the players? Because there would have been some, returning core of about 7 to 8 guys that would have been there from the '95 group, but really a lot of new guys really thrown into a blender.
Yeah, so I didn't know them. I guess I had talked to Jeff Lasbury a little bit about the team when he made the phone call. Tell me about, when practices were and stuff. So we had mentioned there were a lot of guys leaving. Like arriving there, you could sort of tell who had already been in the program, right? And who were the newbies kind of deal. But from the first day, just looking around, you could tell there was lots of talent on the field. So that was definitely encouraging to see.
Yeah, and did did they immediately move you into your usual position, second or short? Was that where you were taking ground balls and reps?
Like, as you know, the training camp is pretty, it was really structured, which was great. It was kind of like what I was used to. So I didn't really see much of, I hardly knew any of the pitchers for the first, 2 weeks of the season. I didn't even know their names. Like Dan Pino, I thought his last name was Dan Pino. I didn't even know Dan was his first name. I thought it was Dan Pino.
Yeah, no one ever gets called by their first name in baseball. Right? We should always clarify that.
With the pitchers, I didn't really know them, but you kind of were in your own little infielder group. So yeah, we had you could tell who was going to be, this sort of starting 4 or 5 in the infield. Just, there were a couple that were not quite ready. So we had, I think, Paul Matecki was there, Jeff Knapp, of course. Me were sort of the mainstays in the infield, and I think the other guy's name was Chris DePonte. I think he played for a couple of years. He was kind of like the backup guy, but
granted, it changes year to year. The year that I played, it was all about the competition on the infield. There was 4 first basemen that played in a rotation, like a weird open audition all year long. And we had a closer that played short, so when he came in to pitch, then there would have to be a new infielder put in to cover up his position. And there were just other anchors at that point, but we had a different, each year it changes with incoming freshmen and changes and graduation and people that move on. It just, it's not like this consistency you see in professional sports where there's a core and that core stays there for 6-7 years and get a run at it, like it's
Yeah.
so it's great to hear that you felt comfortable at least initially. And
Yeah. Like, yeah. It was
did you
definitely
remember,
sorry, go ahead.
no, do you remember the day you got your jersey and you just it all came home that you were, you made the team and that you probably were already fairly convinced that you were going to have a fairly prominent role on it? Do you remember that when that started to click in for you?
I don't remember getting a jersey like in that moment or anything, but just when they started, I think when at training camp and we started playing, like in the afternoons, we do like sort of mini games, like inter squad games, and you could see, I could see I was probably going to be like the starting shortstop kind of deal. You just do the math, right, and I could see where it's going to be. So, yeah, that kind of just gave me more of a sense of, I don't know, confidence, right? That didn't have to try too hard or like, go overboard or something, right? Just do what I've always been doing. I think that's what sort of that program in Brockville kind of helped me sort of with this pretty smooth transition, baseball wise, into the Brock program, because it was almost the same, like the same kind of structure, the same kind of hard assness, if you will, like we had, when I was with the last couple of years of the Bunnies, we had two coaches they had come from Ithaca College, in the States, and they were really hard. Like they were in their early or mid to late 20s, and they're like hard ass guys, right? So kind of felt like I'd already gone through the ringer with those guys, so this was kind of nothing new.
Yeah, and surprisingly, some of the coaches have a fairly a different type of a touch. It's not as hard ass as one would think. And it brings me to Daryl Kemp and your initial meetings with Coach Kemp and his, him being the hitting guru and kind of a cool guy all around. What did you think of Daryl Kemp when you first got to interact with him?
Yeah, like I've heard a couple of the segments, and like, yeah, he kind of was that kind of, didn't say a lot, but when he said something, you like, oh yeah, that's perfect. That makes perfect sense. I'm going to do that, and then you would get better. Like that, it was just that simple for him. And he was, yeah, like a guy who'd been there, done that. You could tell. He didn't, in 96, he wasn't around the team like 100% of the time. But yeah, I really liked Kemp. He was just a straight shooter, and what information he did give you was like valuable, right?
Yeah. And Mr. Briggs Jude, everyone's favorite.
Yeah.
I
think the comparison there is like he's like your uncle, right, or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, like I didn't have a lot of like I don't think I had a lot of interaction with many of the coaches. I just kind of like did my own thing, and I don't think I was very high maintenance in that respect. Like I just kind of, went and played shortstop and went to bat. Like I didn't really go to coaches for help. I don't know if that's, you know what I mean? Like I just kind of, if I needed help.
Some people are self-motivated players who are their own island, right? And maybe your interaction is more with your teammates, and you start to develop friendships with some of the guys on the team. And
yeah, of course.
What do you recall of your 96 season? There were some things that stood out for you.
Yeah, so there was like a group, obviously, of like freshmen, right? But some of us were like, I guess, true freshmen, like just out of high school. So there was me and Jeff Knapp and Drew Arnold, of course, lived right there with Whitehead in the same court as me, same residence. So that was, obviously, we were pretty tight early on. And then Mark Cheeseman, too. He wasn't in the village, but he was in, TQ residence?
Yeah.
Over there. So he was also in my phys ed program, too. So those are some, early friendship bonds for sure. In 96. Yeah. And then, of course, the other sort of 95 core guys that were still there, too. I was sort of friends with some of them, too, like, Ish and Bots and all those guys.
Yeah, it's pretty hard not to be friendly with Rick Bottomley and Tinish. Big personality guys, right? What do you recall about the games in the U.S. and then also at this point the rivalry with McMaster and U of T is pretty hot in Canada. Yeah. So give me your reflections of the level of competition you're seeing and anything that stands out for you in terms of how your first season went.
Okay, it's kind of I don't know if I can distinguish that first season. Like some of the
from
U.S. stuff kind
subsequent
of
ones?
blends in together, but
Yeah.
I was definitely curious to see like what the U.S. competition was like. Like I love going down there, whether it was St. Bonnie or Canisius. We didn't go to Canisius, but they came to us a few times. Like Niagara, Erie. Just wanted to see what the competition level was like, you know. And so that was good to see that, and it was tough. Like they just seemed like they had, you know, a little bit more depth and a little bit, they could hit for a little bit more power. And they had a guy who threw like, you know, 3 miles per hour faster than what we've been used to seeing, that kind of thing, you know? So, but that was good. It was good for us to see that competition and get better from it, you know?
Yeah, eventually I think you guys end up winning, quite a few games in that U.S. schedule. We were 7-1 against the D2 and the JUCO side. We struggled a little more against the D1 ones, but
Yeah.
it's small little depth things that you do notice. It's your top 2 or 3 pitchers can line up pretty well, but then you get into 7 and 8, and their 7 and 8 are a lot like their 2 and 3, and our 7 and 8s were always, I think, scuffling and have to be at their best to be able to handle their lineups. There's some things there that you notice, but certainly some of the parks you get to play at in the US are beautiful, and St. Bonaventure is a beautiful spot to play a baseball game.
It's nice.
It's
At that time,
I'm glad you had
so at that time,
What's that?
Nice scenery and stuff, and cool right on campus, but the infield was trash. I hated playing. It was so bumpy and hard as a
Was it?
rock. Yeah, didn't like that one, but nice. It's nice, like visually. But
Well, 96 you also get the opportunity to play in the Dome.
yeah,
So you guys played Durham College, I believe, in the Sky Dome, and so some exciting things along the way. And obviously the start of a really intense rivalry with McMaster and their core group of people. Tell me a little bit about the difference between playing a game against McMaster and maybe let's pick Waterloo or any other school, basically, than McMaster. It's pretty intense stuff over your career, for sure.
Yeah, it was great. Actually, it was so like, I mean, yeah, we knew we would win against those other schools, right? Just because we had more talent. Especially, I think one key thing too was like for the MAC games or the US games, we'd save our 1-2 pitchers, but we had such good depth in our other pitchers, right? That we could go in and be secure, like thinking we're gonna be like other schools because we just had the pitching to do it. So that was a key part of our team too that sometimes gets overlooked. But yeah, there were some really intense games there with Mac over the years. And in '96, see, I don't remember too much about the '96 playoffs against Mac. I think it was in St. Catharines, but I can't remember anything like significant that happened.
Yeah, I think you guys. What I remember of '96 is because I was running the league, and you guys ended up losing to Dalhousie in the national final. And our favorite professional pitcher there, Trevor Wambach, throwing a three-hitter, right? And really, it was kind of becoming a recurring nightmare at that point. Brock would get right to the doorstep, and then there'd be some pro pitcher standing there throwing in the low 90s, making it really difficult, right? So, and 1 and 2 swings make a big difference in those types of games, So
yeah, we had gotten down early too, like in the first inning or so. I think it was like 4-0, 4-1, so that was tough to crawl back.
Yeah, and when a guy's throwing that well, you just got to tip your cap and understand that he went straight from SEVA and signed a 5-year deal with the Expos and pitched in their minor league system for 5 years. People don't know that, but that's the truth. And, and then the next year, obviously, we're dealing with Brad Reeson walking you guys off and McMaster winning a national championship, which must have chafed everybody pretty hard, I would think. You guys are probably pretty disappointed. What do you remember about that particular experience and how it changed everyone's mindset for the 1998 season, which I suspect is probably your last with the team, and you get to, did you win back-to-backs or did you just win the one?
So I went 96 and then graduated in 2000. So 4 years.
Yeah. So you get the experience of heartbreak and then heaven. Tell me a little bit about what the heartbreak meant to you first.
Yeah. It was bad. Didn't like it. Like losing to Mac in 97 was tough because I thought we were a pretty good team. But not good enough that year, and just to get walked off like that, yeah, it's tough way to go. And then for Mac, of course, to win it like in St. Catharines. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it. I think it kind of refocused everyone, and I remember talking to Nichol out that summer, being like, "All right, well, we have to get better, or like just individually this summer, so we can be better, going into the 98 season." So, and then of course there was lots of new blood that year too coming into the program. I think we got Jeremy Walker that year. He was like a middle lineup hitter for us, and a great outfielder. So that was key. Just I think from my perspective anyway, I really took it like I need to get better this summer to be better in the fall. And ended up being that 98 year. It ended up being my best, like, I think, overall year that I had at Raw. And I think the coaches and the recruiting made them, like, it pushed them to get better too. So although we took the loss that year, I think it just made our program that much better in the long run.
It's great when individual players make the decision to try to influence a group outcome by getting better themselves. It's the only thing that you can control, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is your own improvement. I like to say to the Mac guys, like, the reason they won in 97 was because they got tired of losing to Brock and eventually had to slay that dragon. And then the reason Brock went back-to-back in 98, 99 is because you had to slay the McMaster dragon. They finished ahead of you in the 98 season. They only lost once or twice, and you guys knocked them out. So I think you're bringing out the best in each other in this time period, because the games are next level and the competitors are all they're familiar. You don't like probably seeing Doug Lunny's curveball any more than he likes seeing you in the batter's box. So it's really interesting to think that two opponents.
I'm so glad we had that, right? Because it could have been, UT was a really good team too. We seem to have their number more. But like, it was just fun to have like a game and, a season that like meant something to like everybody involved in it, right? It would have been not as fun if it was kind of like beating up on Guelph and whoever else to win the OUA, right?
Yeah.
So it was great. Like, yeah. It was great to have that.
That's exciting. And you're progressing. Any thoughts at this point, as you're going along in school, that, teaching is where you want to end up while you're playing?
Yeah. So the phys ed program at Brock was, there's only really one path that takes you to, right? It's teaching. So that was kind of almost laid out before me, right? Just being in that program. I think one of my last year, the year after mine, they kind of changed the program. I'm not even sure it was phys ed anymore. They might have changed to like kinesiology or health science / kinesiology or something, but which maybe wouldn't lead you to teaching as much. But this program was definitely like geared towards being a teacher.
It's amazing. And Grant, a simple little question that I think always warrants a good answer, because you're a slightly different era than I was, but did you have a favorite spot that you would go to grab a cold one? Were you an Isaac's guy? Were you a Oliver's Twist guy?
First year, right? It's so easy just to walk. If you're a resident there, walk over to Isaac's on Thursdays there. But so the London Arms was a nice chill spot there for a while. I'm sure you know that one. And we would spend some time at Big Bucks. I don't know if you're familiar with that place downtown. I think it was newer bar.
Yeah, I made it to Big Bucks a couple times when I would come back to visit, and I don't remember the end of the night, so that'll tell you how it went. But
right. Yeah, that was more of a go out clubbing kind of place.
Yeah.
With a bit of a country feel to it, but and then
it was light inside. Remember, it just had like all kinds of wood and stuff, and it kind of looked like the inside of a hunting cabin. But
I think a description of it. Yeah, and then
that's great. And
Cat's Caboose down there, down the hill.
Yeah, you guys were a little bit different in that you know, at that time it started to become more of a pub culture, and you know, it'd be a good place to watch a game or you know, suck back a beer and see some music. My generation was all about Smart Alex, which was it became Oliver's Twist when you were there, but it was right across the street from Brock.
Yeah.
And you know, unfortunately, it you know, it was a prime place because the bar surrounded a dance floor that was sunk in the middle, and it was light, so you could see everybody.
Yeah,
and that was I have lots of misadventures in Smart Alex, so we'll move on because talking about bar adventures are probably not going to endear us to our kids. So Grant, you know, you win a couple nationals, and that's a great way to really celebrate quite a ride with the group of players that you're playing with. And you graduate, and what happens next for you? Are you also still playing baseball outside of university at this time? You're playing
yeah, like in the summers I would go back home and I'd play for the Ottawa team, Ottawa European Canadians, that senior team. And again, we would I think we did OVAs one year, but we would also do like the US stuff, right? Go to their playdowns. So that was really competitive. And then after graduation, I played for 2 or 3 years for the Markham Pioneers. I think they're called something else now, maybe, but that was Mark Cheeseman, sort of, he was on that team. So I was still living I was living in Burlington/Hamilton at the time, so I could make that work. And so we ended up winning in 2003. We won the Ontario Lins with the Markham Pioneers, and we went to the Nationals, and we got bronze at the Nationals that year. So that was a really fun summer too. Just to be able to play with Cheesy, like not on the Brock team, and with some of his buddies there were some former like Canadian University players on that team too, like Jesse Dines and Shelby Nelson. There were a few of them around on that team. He also played.
Yeah, it's a different feel to win in the summer. I got the chance to do that a few times. So, and what are you doing? Like at this point, are you starting to supply teach? Are you through have you gone to teachers college?
So no, I was living actually probably waiting for going through teachers college and waiting for my then girlfriend, now wife, to sort of finish up her degree at McMaster. So he was actually living just off McMaster campus. And then, so she still had the year left, and I got hired for my first year in Milton. There's a school for the deaf in Milton. So I worked there for a year and then transferred to Belleville the next year. And then that's when I kind of played one more year for Markham doing the commuting thing. And then just kind of stopped playing baseball. I was like 25, 26 at the time, maybe. And it was just, there wasn't a lot, in the Belleville area. No. And the commuting was going to be tough. I did do some sort of, a tournament with buddies once in a while, every year or so. And then sometimes I'd play in Kingston as like a sub, and not very often.
So your McMaster attending wife, did you somehow, was she originally from Eastern Ontario, or were you able
she's from Kingston. She's from Kingston. Okay. So one summer we worked, the bridge that goes across to the U.S. in Gananoque area? There's a little campground there, and I was coming from Mauritown, and she was coming from Kingston, and we met at that campground. So we actually lived closer. Super cool. We lived closer together on university than we did at our own towns. But
I was gonna say you didn't have to work that hard though to convince her that, hey, I'm in Milton, I'm here supporting your journey through a Hamilton-based campus, and now I'm going to go teach at a school out in out way east of here.
No. She was all for it because Yeah.
Yeah.
So she actually
Well,
lived. So she was still doing her masters, and I was out in Belleville. So she actually lived with Nish and his wife and Fabio in Burlington for a year while she was finishing up her masters, and I was out in Belleville teaching. So
that's, you either got to really trust your teammates or you got to be sitting and dreading all of that experience. It's one of two things, no middle
yeah,
ground there. But no, it's amazing, and obviously you've had some some real stability in where you've been teaching and those kinds of things. You know, Speaking of people like Fabio Del Rio and Andrew Tinish, um, it's almost been 30 years. In your case, maybe a little closer to 25 since you were playing at Brock. Do you maintain a lot of relationships from your time there, or is there people that you kind of wish you had, and it just life gets in the way a little bit, as it will
yeah, a little
for
bit of
anybody.
that. Like not a lot, but some. Like Fabio and Nish still. Uh, Cheeseman, I try to. He's tough to get a hold of. Um, but yeah, like not a lot, but a few guys. But yeah, it's been really great seeing them sort of on this podcast and kind of seeing what they've been up to, and they'll be great in the fall, of course. Getting to see them some of them in
Yeah,
person.
of course. Hopefully we won't have to bail out anyone out of a penal institution or any of these kinds of things. Our graduates seem to be doing pretty good and leading some pretty interesting lives and those kinds of things. And Grant, do you feel that it's going to be competitive though when you put a uniform back on for the first time, basically
I
since
don't
you're
know.
25?
I don't think so. No, I think those days are gone. Like they were great when we had them, but like no. I mean, you'll try your best and stuff, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know how
Yeah,
competitive.
I'm not 100% sure, right? Like I think competitive people are always have that element in them. They, I think of the times when I go to play slow pitch now. I've been playing slow pitch for a while, and it's catastrophically, I've gotten injured playing slow pitch way more than I did playing baseball. But um, there's still times where it kicks in, and all of a sudden, I don't want to lose to this team here because they've
Yeah,
done something to annoy me.
that's true.
And
Yeah,
it's funny. The McMaster guys all are great people, but I think when I see that maroon and that M and that hear them kind of talk the way that they do, I have a funny feeling that our sense of pride is going to kick in a little bit, even though the results will be horrible, right? The 50-mile-an-hour pitch will become a 51-mile-an-hour
yeah.
pitch because of the adrenaline. But I think it'll be fun from that perspective, and we get to do some things that are, that are really, I think, important that we can't lose sight of in all the nostalgia of all of this. It's nice to see guys after 30 years, but two things. One is we're going to be establishing a scholarship at Brock for incoming freshman players named after Todd Nye, who's a guy who had just the worst bad luck accident, I think, ever on a baseball field but is the unsinkable Molly Brown. He's an educator like you are. He's a principal at a school in Barrie and leads people and does so in the same way that he was as a big 6'5", 230-pound catcher. Wasn't going to make the team as a catcher, but made it as a pitcher because he trained himself to be a pitcher in 1 year through hard work. That's what that guy's all about, and I think it'll be great for that. And Brad Reason is a guy that you lined up against a bunch, also an educator, and a high school teacher who passed away from colon cancer. And these are ways for us to give back and remind people of the kinds of people that they should aspire to be by coming out of these programs. I have a good question for you, Grant. If you could give a piece of advice to any incoming freshman into a, particularly the Brock program, what would you tell them to do? I mean, what advice would you give them?
Well, come prepared. Be prepared to work, and then I wish I would have done more of this too, as when I was in the program. Like, kind of enjoy the process. Like, enjoy getting to go to after you've gone to school all day, going to like a 2-hour practice. I just enjoy being able to do that because eventually you're not going to get to do that, right? So just
Yeah.
enjoy the process and try to enjoy getting better at it. Don't just focus on winning and the games, which are also fun, but enjoy that other time you have, at the park, because it's not infinite.
No, it is one of the more unusual things. The part that we all miss the most is probably, for me, it's aesthetic. It's the sound of spikes on dugout steps. I miss that scratching metallic clang that happens with
Yeah.
that. But it's also the ridiculous conversations you have with teammates, because baseball is a different game than other games, right? Like if you're playing hockey, you do a shift, you're sucking wind and oxygen the entire time afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And then you go back out there. There's no conversation. The conversation happens after the game or before the game. Baseball, there's a lot of conversations that happen during the game, funny moments, little bits where, you're watching the fifth pitcher warm up in an inning and it's kind of like, I wonder why the sky is blue. Yeah, if you get into the kind of some of those very strange things, is the dugout experience something you miss quite a bit?
Like of course we had a couple characters, right? With the broad, like I mean I was out in the field most of the time, so I only had the time in the dugout right when you're batting or whatever, but like Colin was just a riot, he'd sit there all quiet and then like somebody would say something and he'd just like, quip back something even funnier, He just accurate, so that was enjoyable to listen to, of course. Yeah, but I mean, obviously being around the plazas, you miss that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and people like Colin, I think you are priceless on teams because they keep everybody pretty loose, but you also, if you're smart, you're not going to leave any open-ended statement open around a guy like that because he'll just hop all over it.
You
And
do
then
it
have
once or
that little,
twice, and that's
that little
maybe
giggle of his. It's unbelievable. So, Grant, are you, here's a good question because I don't ask it enough, given that Andy Tinish, who we both played with, works for them. Are you a Jays fan and do you get out to many games, or is this,
oh yeah,
are you still a baseball
Jays
fan?
fan. Yeah, always been a Jays fan. Yeah, so went actually this spring, like spring break, as a family, we went to spring training. That's the first time I'd done that, and that was really fun to do that.
Yeah, did you enjoy the experience? Was it different than you thought it was going to be?
Oh yeah, it went kind of. You don't really know until you're there, right? It was like the town. Have you been before to the?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So the two towns are Clearwater and Dunedin are just beautiful, right on the water, and the park's nice, and it's just a little bit more, easygoing, like atmosphere at the park. So that was nice, and you can walk anywhere you want. And I was able to hook up with Nish and Coach LePage too, so that was fun to catch up with them a bit. It was fun.
Yeah, the one thing that always strikes me about professional players is how big they are. Like I'm not a small guy, and when you're 6'3" and 230, 235 like I am, most of the world is not bigger, except the first time I walked into
I feel
the change room at that time, the Sky Dome in '92. And when Dwayne Ward is the smallest pitcher, and he was maybe 6'1", 230 pounds, thick as what, big, strong guy. But, even Mark Eichhorn, who looks small and does that, that sidearm pitch.
Yeah.
The guy was like 6'5" and big, long, lanky arms. And, I felt very, very small by comparison. And, but professional baseball it's a fine line now. And I think, at the time when you were playing, for sure, there was a premium on size, for example, right? They say all scouts were obsessed about having to be a certain size. And you remind me an awful lot of the Houston brothers who played on the year before you came. They were both exceptional ball players. And Darryl Kemp used to say to me, what I wouldn't give for both those guys to be about 3 inches taller, I'd sign them both, right? And I think now that we live in a world that's not so chemically enhanced, I think, and they see the value of different shapes and size type pitching, different shapes and size type hitters. may have been a different role for you at this point, and maybe you would get a little more attention from the States, but no one's going to trade in your career. So you win a couple nationals, you get to play and win an OBA. Is there anything that you would have changed about your Brock journey, Grant?
No, it was pretty nice journey. I think I sort of got better. In the 4 years I was there, I improved as a player, and I think I mastered my abilities as much as I could. I had to really I always with the defense. I could always play defense, right? I just had to, when I was younger, a teenager, I had to work on being a good hitter. I knew if I wasn't gonna play if I couldn't hit, so I had to really work on my offensive game.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the career was pretty special. I liked it.
And that brings us to, obviously, you've had the honor of being a Hall of Fame inductee. And what does that mean to you? And what what do you carry forth in life? Do you coach your son's taken interest in baseball, and have you done any coaching, which seems to be rampant amongst everyone that went to Brock? I always feel like I'm a leper of some sort because everyone else coached and I didn't. It's kind of funny that way.
I didn't do much coaching actually. So I think I was staying there. I got out. Didn't play much after I was sort of in my late 20s, and then I think that was just all right, I'm good for now. Didn't do much coaching at all in the sport. Yeah.
Well, you and I can be at the table of two compared to everybody else at McMaster and Brock that have all gone on to either coach their kids or coach their school team, or
coaching. I did some basketball and volleyball at school, other sports, just not baseball.
Yeah, are you happy that it's a happy thing to park, and just say that I had a great career there, and you can revisit it with things like this, but it's not something you want to project on your kids.
Sorry?
It's not something I'm finding a lot of the guys didn't push it on their kids, right? They'd like if their kids played baseball, but they just let them do their own thing. Because I find that when you play at a very high level, you get really laid back about other people. I was really laid back about my girls. They both played varsity or rep hockey and soccer all over the place, different sports, but I was quite happy to just Hakuna Matata it and be pretty happy to just let it fall where it may. I wasn't gonna interject as that dad. I don't know how you felt about that, but I was pretty laid back watching
similar
sports.
I still follow the game closely enough, at the MLB level or whatever, because that's fun. And my oldest son, he's into baseball. He's in a fantasy league. He follows the league. He plays high school baseball. So he's into it a little bit because of me, I think. But he's into rep curling. So we've been traveling all over for curling. He's really into that. So he does a little bit of baseball, but
curling must be interesting. Is it because it's such a social game, right? So I assume that traveling to go to a place where everyone kind of has a pretty good raising of the wrist afterwards and enjoys themselves sounds like a great sport to be following.
Yeah, I know. No, I knew nothing about curling before he got into it, and I still don't know much about it. But it's fun. It's he's in a little. It's Ontario curling circuit, right? So he curls out of Kingston, and he's met some good friends through that.
Well, that'd be a reason to drop Colin Tyler a note. Colin is taken up curling, and I can't imagine what the hell he whispers or yells down the sheet while he's throwing a rock. But pretty cool from that perspective, Grant. Anything that you really want to get done in the next, obviously you want to see the boys off and see them off to school, and but anything you've got ahead of you that you want to get accomplished as you move forward here?
In terms of life goals?
Not just life. If you want to travel, if you want to,
we travel quite a bit as a family. That's one thing we've done a lot of. We usually do one big trip every summer, go somewhere, and sometimes the kids go like during the school year too with their moms. So yeah, big traveling family. Our next big trip is we got a New Zealand trip planned. So it'll take us across the other side of the world. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
It's a super long flight, my friend.
Yeah.
And most people haven't been to New Zealand. It seems beautiful, and I assume that people will be picking your brain like you're some sort of travel log when you get back and go, maybe we'll do a little podcast segment with you making travel recommendations. That sounds like fun.
Well, I just tag along. It's my wife who does all the nitty-gritty stuff.
Well, that's super cool. And listen, Grant, we're all obviously looking forward to seeing you in about 7 months' time, and you can run out to shortstop or pitch an inning if you like, whatever you feel like doing. At this point, wooden bats are winning over aluminum bats, so I thought I'd pick your brain while we're on the podcast. Where would you cast your vote, for a wooden bat or a aluminum one?
Flip a coin. I don't have a preference. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to flip. I'll flip a coin when we get off, and I'm not going to tell you the result. But
okay, fair enough.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's not easy finding time when you've got a crowded Uber and ATM schedule like most parents do, but it's good to see you, Grant. And we'll see you soon. And
thank you.
Appreciate getting caught up. Thanks, man.
Yes.
Well, the smell